Princess Zara stood in her crystal palace, looking out at the dying gardens of her homeworld. The purple flowers that once bloomed bright across the land now grew pale and weak. Just like her people, just like her daughters. The Veltar Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years, but now faced a problem that all their technology could not fix. Her 3 daughters sat behind her in the royal chamber. Lyra was 25 years old and the smartest scientist on their planet. Nova was 23 and commanded their greatest warships. Iris was 21 and created art that moved hearts across the galaxy. They were perfect in every way except one. They could not have healthy children. The royal doctor had given Zara the worst news 3 days ago. All Veltar noble families were having the same problem. Their children were born weak and sick. Many died before their first birthday. The few who lived could not have children of their own. The Veltar bloodlines were ending. Zara turned from the window and looked at her daughters. Their skin had a blue crystal shine that marked them as royal blood. Their eyes glowed with silver light. They were beautiful, but they carried the curse of their dying race. Every noble family on their world faced the same fate. The problem had started slowly over many centuries. Veltar nobles only married other nobles. They chose partners based on family rank and genetic matching. Love was not important. Only bloodline purity mattered. This had worked for thousands of years, but now it was killing them. Dr. Velinash had explained it to Zara in simple terms. When the same families married each other for too long, their genetics became too similar. Children born from such matches grew weaker with each generation. The royal genetics had become so pure that they were now poisoned. Zara remembered her own mother facing the same problem. Of her mother's 6 children, only Zara had lived to adulthood. Her 5 brothers and sisters had all died young from genetic diseases. Now Zara watched her own daughters face the same fate. The princess walked to her desk and picked up the research report that Dr. Velinash had prepared. The thick file contained studies of every species in their galaxy. The doctor had searched for any race that might be genetically compatible with the Veltar. Most species were too different. Their genetics would not mix with Veltar biology, but one species had caught the doctor's attention. A young race from a small planet called Earth. Humans. They were considered primitive by galactic standards. They had only recently discovered space travel. Their technology was thousands of years behind the Veltar. Most galactic races saw them as barely civilized, yet the research showed something amazing. Human genetics were incredibly diverse. Where Veltar nobles had become too similar, humans were wonderfully different. Each human carried unique genetic patterns. More importantly, early tests showed that human and Veltar genetics could mix successfully. The idea was shocking. No Veltar noble had ever married outside their species. The thought of mixing their pure bloodline with alien genetics horrified the High Council. But Zara was desperate. She would do anything to save her daughters. Dr. Velinash had run secret tests using genetic samples. The results were beyond their wildest hopes. Human Veltar hybrid genetics were not just compatible, they were stronger than pure Veltar genetics. The human diversity seemed to fix the problems caused by centuries of pure bloodline breeding. Zara looked at her daughters again. Lyra was reading a scientific journal. Nova was studying battle reports. Iris was sketching designs for a new sculpture. They had no idea that their mother was planning something that would shock their entire civilization. The princess had already made her decision. She would bring a human male to their world. He would father children with her daughters. The royal bloodline would continue with human genetics mixed in. The High Council would be furious. Her people might reject her, but her daughters would live and have healthy children. Zara called for her advisor, an old Veltar named Kethmer, who had served her family for 50 years. When he arrived, she showed him the genetic research. His silver eyes grew wide as he read the report. Kethmer was shocked, but he understood the desperate situation. He had watched too many noble children die young. If humans could save the Veltar bloodlines, then they must try this plan. He agreed to help Zara arrange contact. With Earth. The princess knew this would not be easy. They could not simply tell the humans why they wanted one of their males. The truth would sound too strange. Instead, they would create a cover story. They would invite humans to visit their world as part of a cultural exchange program. Once a suitable human arrived, Zara would slowly reveal the real purpose. She had specific requirements for the human male. He needed to be young and healthy. He should be intelligent and adaptable. Most importantly, he needed to be someone who could connect with her daughters as individuals. This would not be just about genetics. Her daughters deserved to find happiness with their chosen partner. Zara stood up and walked to the great window again. The dying garden stretched out below her. Soon, if her plan worked, new life would bloom again. Human genetics would bring strength back to the Veltar bloodline. Her daughters would have healthy children who could have children of their own. Princess touched the communication device on her desk. It was time to contact Earth. Time to find the human who would save her family and possibly her entire race. She would bring a human to their world, no matter what anyone else thought about it. The future of the Veltar Empire now depended on a species they had always considered primitive. But Zara had learned that sometimes the most unexpected solutions were the best ones. Humans might be young and simple compared to the Veltar, but they carried something our people had lost. They carried the gift of genetic diversity and the strength that came with it. As she prepared to send the first message to Earth, Princess Zara whispered a prayer to the ancient crystal gods of her people. She asked them to guide her choice and help her find the right human for this impossible task. The fate of 3 princesses and their entire bloodline rested on this one desperate decision. The message from space arrived on a Tuesday morning at the United Earth Defense Headquarters in New York. Commander Lisa Park was drinking her coffee when the communication arrays picked up the alien transmission. The signal was unlike anything Earth had ever received. It was clear, organized, and obviously from an advanced civilization. The message was simple but shocking. An alien empire called the Veltar wanted to establish peaceful contact with humanity. They were offering a cultural exchange program. Selected humans would be invited to visit their homeworld to learn about their advanced civilization. In return, Veltar representatives would study human culture and technology. Within hours, the message reached the highest levels of Earth government. President Adams called an emergency meeting of the Global Defense Council. Scientists, military leaders, and diplomats gathered to discuss humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. The Veltar had included basic information about themselves in their message. They ruled a vast empire spanning dozens of star systems. Their technology was thousands of years ahead of human science. They claimed to be peaceful and were interested in learning about younger species like humanity. Earth's response was careful, but positive. Humanity was ready to take its place among the galactic civilizations. The government announced a selection process for the cultural exchange program. They would choose their best and brightest to represent humanity among the stars. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison heard about the program while working on engine repairs at the Nevada Space Base. At 28 years old, Jake was one of Earth's top pilots and engineers. He had flown missions to Mars and helped design the new generation of space fighters. When he heard about the chance to visit an alien world, he knew he had to volunteer. Jake had always been curious about what lay beyond Earth's solar system. As a child, he had spent nights looking at the stars and wondering if anyone was looking back. Now he had the chance to actually meet them. He filled out the application immediately. The selection process was intense. Thousands of humans applied for only 12 spots in the exchange program. Jake went through months of testing. Physical exams, psychological evaluations, intelligence tests, and interviews with government officials. The selection committee wanted to send only the best representatives of humanity. Jake's background helped his application. He had grown up on a farm in Iowa before joining the military. His parents had taught him to work hard and treat everyone with respect. He had degrees in engineering and linguistics. He spoke 4 human languages and could learn new ones quickly. Most importantly, he had a natural ability to solve problems and adapt to new situations. The committee was impressed by Jake's test results. When faced with impossible problems, he found creative solutions. When dealing with stress, he remained calm and focused. When working with others, he naturally became a leader while still listening to different opinions. These qualities would serve him well in alien territory. After 6 months of testing, Jake received the call. He had been selected for the program. He would travel to the Veltar homeworld as one of Earth's first ambassadors to an alien civilization. The responsibility was huge, but Jake was excited about the adventure. The Veltar ship arrived at Earth 2 weeks later. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The vessel was made of what looked like living crystal that shifted colors as it moved. It was 3 times larger than Earth's biggest space station and moved without any visible engines. Jake and the other selected humans met the Veltar crew at a space station in Earth orbit. The aliens were humanoid, but clearly not human. Their skin had a blue crystal shine, and their eyes glowed with silver light. They moved with graceful precision and spoke in musical voices. The Veltar captain was named Kethvar. He welcomed the humans aboard their ship and began showing them around. Jake was amazed by the technology. The walls seemed to be alive, responding to touch and voice commands. The engines used principles that human science had never imagined. During the long journey to Veltar space, Jake spent time learning about his alien hosts. He discovered that Kethvar was more than just a ship captain. He was also a skilled engineer who enjoyed solving technical problems. Despite their different species, Jake and Kethvar found they had much in common. The breakthrough came when the ship's main engine developed a problem. 3 days into the journey, the Veltar crew had never seen this type of failure before. Their advanced computers could not find a solution. The ship was stuck between star systems with no way to continue. Jake asked if he could look at the problem. The Veltar were polite but doubtful. How could a primitive human help with technology that was thousands of years ahead of Earth science? But Kethvar was curious about human thinking, so he agreed to let Jake try. Jake studied the engine for hours. He could not understand how the technology worked, but he could see the patterns in the failure. The problem was not in any single part, but in how the parts worked together. The engine was trying to do too many things at once. His solution was simple, but effective. Instead of trying to fix the complex interactions, Jake suggested temporarily shutting down some of the engine's advanced features. This would reduce its efficiency, but allow it to function normally. The Veltar could make proper repairs once they reached their homeworld. The fix worked perfectly. The engine came back online, and the ship continued its journey. Kethvar was amazed by Jake's approach. The human had not tried to understand their advanced technology. Instead, he had looked at the problem from a completely different angle and found a solution that none of the Veltar had considered. Word of Bentley. Jake's success spread through the ship. The Veltar crew began asking him questions about human thinking and problem solving. They were fascinated by how differently humans approached challenges. Where Veltar used logic and computation, humans used intuition and creativity. Jake also learned about Veltar culture during the journey. They were an old and proud civilization that valued tradition and order. Families were organized by bloodline and rank. Marriage was arranged based on genetic compatibility rather than personal choice. The concept of romantic love existed, but was considered less important than duty to family and species. The more Jake learned about the Veltar, the more he appreciated human diversity. Earth had many different cultures and ways of thinking. Humans chose their own partners and created families based on love and personal connection. This seemed strange to the Veltar, but also fascinating. As the ship approached Veltar Prime, Jake felt both excited and nervous. He was about to become one of the first humans to set foot on an alien world. He had no idea that Princess Zara was waiting for him with plans that would change both their species forever. The ship entered orbit around a beautiful world of crystal cities and purple gardens. Jake looked down at his destination and wondered what adventures awaited him. He thought he was there for cultural exchange, but fate had much bigger plans for the young human engineer. Jake stepped onto the surface of Veltar Prime and felt the strange gravity pull at his body. Everything around him seemed to glow with soft crystal light. The buildings rose like living gems from the purple ground. Gardens of alien flowers filled the air with sweet music as the wind moved through them. Princess Zara met him at the landing platform with a formal escort of royal guards. She was more beautiful than any being Jake had ever seen. Her blue crystal skin caught the light of two suns, and her silver eyes seemed to look right into his soul. When she spoke, her voice was like music. The princess welcomed Jake and the other humans to her world with a grand ceremony. They were honored guests of the royal family. Rooms had been prepared for them in the Crystal Palace. They would spend the next month learning about Veltar culture, science, and technology. For the first week, Jake toured the great cities of Veltar Prime. He visited their universities, where scientists studied the mysteries of the universe. He saw their factories where machines built things that seemed like magic to human eyes. He walked through their art galleries, where crystals sang songs of light and color. The Veltar people were kind but distant. They treated the humans with respect, but also with the careful politeness used for interesting animals. Jake could sense that most Veltar saw humans as primitive creatures who had somehow learned to build spaceships. Princess Zara was different. She asked Jake many questions about human culture and thinking. She wanted to know how humans solved problems, how they chose their life partners, and how they raised their children. Her interests seemed deeper than simple curiosity. On the 8th day, Princess Zara invited Jake to a private dinner in her personal chambers. The room was beautiful beyond words. Crystal walls showed moving pictures of distant galaxies. The table was made from a single piece of purple stone that glowed with inner light. During the meal, Princess Zara told Jake about her 3 daughters. She spoke of Lyra's brilliant scientific mind, Nova's courage as a military leader, and Iris's gift for creating beautiful art. Jake could hear the love and pride in her voice when she talked about them. Then Princess Zara's tone became serious. She told Jake the real reason why he had been brought to their world. The cultural exchange program was just a cover story. The truth was much more important and dangerous. The princess explained the genetic crisis facing her people. She described how centuries of pure bloodline breeding had weakened the Veltar race. Noble families could no longer produce healthy children. The royal bloodlines were dying out. Jake listened in amazement as Princess Zara revealed her desperate plan. Her scientists had discovered that human genetics could solve the Veltar crisis. Humans and Veltar were genetically compatible. More than that, human genetic diversity would strengthen Veltar bloodlines instead of weakening them. The princess looked directly into Jake's eyes as she made her request. She wanted him to father children with her 3 daughters. This would save the royal bloodline and prove that human Veltar genetics could work. If successful, it might save the entire Veltar noble class. Jake was shocked by the revelation. He had come to Veltar Prime, thinking he was a cultural ambassador. Now he learned that he was actually being considered as a breeding partner for alien royalty. The responsibility was overwhelming, but Jake was human, and humans had always faced impossible challenges with curiosity rather than fear. Instead of being offended by the princess's request, he found himself fascinated by the scientific and social implications. This could be the most important moment in the history of both species. Jake asked Princess Zara if he could meet her daughters before making any decisions. He wanted to understand them as individuals, not just as potential partners in a genetic experiment. This request surprised the princess. In Veltar culture, marriages were arranged based on family rank and genetic compatibility. Personal feelings were secondary. The idea of getting to know potential partners as individuals was a completely human concept. Princess Zara agreed to Jake's request, curious to see how this strange human approach might work. The next day, Jake met Lyra in her laboratory. She was working on a project to create new forms of crystal technology. Jake was impressed by her intelligence and dedication, but he was more interested in learning about her as a person. Jake asked Lyra about her dreams and goals beyond science. He wanted to know what made her happy, what worried her, and how she saw her future. These questions were strange to Lyra. No one had ever asked her about personal feelings before. Everything in her life had been planned based on duty to family and species. As they talked, Jake shared stories about human scientists and inventors. He told her about people who had changed the world through curiosity and determination. Lyra was fascinated by the idea of choosing your own path in life rather than following predetermined roles. The second daughter, Nova, met Jake at the military training grounds. She was practicing combat techniques with weapons that could cut through solid metal. Jake watched her fluid movements and perfect technique with admiration. But when Jake asked Nova about her personal interests, she seemed confused. Her entire life was dedicated to military service and protecting the Empire. She had never considered what she might want to do for herself. Jake told Nova about human soldiers who had become artists, teachers, and farmers after their military service. He explained how humans often changed careers and pursued new interests throughout their lives. The idea of personal choice and growth was foreign but intriguing to Nova. The youngest daughter, Iris, was the most curious about Jake. She met him in her art studio, surrounded by crystal sculptures that seemed to move and breathe with their own life. Her artistic talent was beyond anything Jake had ever seen. Iris asked Jake many questions about human art and creativity. She wanted to know how humans found inspiration and how they expressed emotions through their work. Jake shared examples of human music, painting, and literature that moved people's hearts. As Jake spent time with each daughter, he began to see them not as alien princesses, but as individuals with their own personalities, dreams, and struggles. They were brilliant and talented, but they had never been allowed to make personal choices about their own lives. Jake realized that his human perspective was already changing how the daughters thought about themselves and their futures. The concept of personal choice and emotional connection was spreading through their conversations like ripples in a pond. Princess Zara watched these interactions with growing amazement. She had expected Jake to evaluate her daughters based on their genetic potential and royal status. Instead, he was treating them as individuals worthy of respect and personal connection. Jake's approach was revolutionary to Veltar thinking. He was showing them that relationships could be based on mutual understanding and emotional bonds rather than just duty and genetics. This human way of thinking was as valuable as the genetic diversity Jake could provide. After meeting all three daughters, Jake told Princess Zara that he needed time to consider her request. He was honored by her trust, but wanted to make sure any decision would be right for everyone involved, including the daughters themselves. Princess Zara agreed to give Jake time to think. She was beginning to understand that humans brought more than just genetic diversity to any relationship. They brought new ways of thinking about love, family, and personal choice that could change Veltar society in ways she had never imagined. The Veltar High Council met in emergency session 3 days after Jake's arrival. The ancient nobles who ruled the empire had learned of Princess Zara's plan, and they were furious. The crystal chamber echoed with angry voices as they debated. The princess's shocking proposal. Elder Kurthani was the oldest member of the council. His crystal skin had grown dark with age, and his silver eyes burned with centuries of pride. He stood before the assembled nobles and spoke against the princess's plan with passionate anger. The idea of mixing royal Veltar blood with alien genetics was unthinkable to the elder. Humans were a primitive species, barely capable of space travel. Their short lives and chaotic emotions made them unsuitable partners for the noble Veltar bloodlines. Other council members agreed with Elder Kurthani. They had built their civilization on the foundation of genetic purity and noble bloodlines. To abandon these principles would destroy everything their ancestors had created over thousands of years. But Princess Zara stood firm before the council. She presented the scientific evidence showing that human genetics could save their dying bloodlines. She reminded them that noble children were dying because their genetics had become too similar. Something had to change, or their entire class would disappear within 2 generations. The debate continued for hours. Some council members supported the princess's desperate plan. Others demanded that she send the humans away immediately. Finally, Elder Kurthani proposed a compromise that satisfied no one but offered a way forward. If Princess Zara insisted on this dangerous experiment, then the human would have to prove his worth through the trials of worth. These ancient tests had been used for thousands of years to judge whether non-nobles could marry into royal families. No alien had ever attempted them. The trials were designed to be nearly impossible. They tested intelligence, strength, and moral character in ways that pushed candidates beyond their limits. Most Veltar who attempted the trials failed. The council was confident that a primitive human would have no chance of success. Princess Zara agreed to the council's demand. She knew the trials were unfair, but they offered the only path forward. If Jake could somehow pass the tests, even the most traditional, nobles would have to accept him. If he failed, her plan would die with his defeat. Jake learned about the trials from Princess Zara that evening. She explained the 3 tests he would face and warned him about their difficulty. No one would blame him if he chose to return to Earth rather than risk failure and humiliation. But Jake was human, and humans had never backed down from impossible challenges. He accepted the trials without hesitation. He had come to Veltar Prime to represent his species, and he would not abandon that responsibility now. The first trial was the Maze of Logic. Jake was brought to a vast chamber filled with crystal puzzles that shifted and changed as he watched. The maze tested both analytical thinking and intuitive understanding. Candidates had to solve increasingly complex problems while navigating through the changing structure. Veltar approached the maze with pure computation and logical analysis. They used their advanced minds to calculate solutions and predict the maze's changes. This approach worked for the early levels, but became impossible as the puzzles grew more complex. Jake used a different strategy. He combined logical thinking with human intuition and creative problem solving. When analytical methods failed, he tried unexpected approaches. He looked for patterns that logic missed and made intuitive leaps that pure computation could not achieve. The maze responded to Jake's unusual approach in ways the Veltar had never seen. Sections that had remained locked for centuries open to his creative solutions. Puzzles that stumped the greatest Veltar minds yielded to his combination of logic and imagination. Jake completed the maze of logic in record time. The council members watching the trial were amazed and disturbed. How had a primitive human succeeded where their best minds had failed? Elder Corthani declared that the human had been lucky, nothing more. The second trial was the combat of will. Jake faced 3 Veltar champion warriors in tests of physical and mental endurance. The champions were stronger, faster, and more skilled than any human could hope to be. Their crystal bodies were nearly indestructible, and their weapons could cut through steel. Jake knew he could not match the Veltar champions in pure strength or speed. Instead, he used human adaptability and determination. When one approach failed, he immediately tried another. When knocked down, he got back up and kept fighting. The first combat test was a battle of physical strength. The Veltar champion easily overpowered Jake in direct confrontation. But Jake refused to give up. He used strategy and timing to turn the champion's strength against him. After hours of struggle, Jake found a way to win through persistence and creative tactics. The second combat was a test of mental endurance. Jake had to maintain focus and clarity while subjected to painful crystal frequencies that disrupted human brain patterns. The torture was designed to break his will and force. Surrender. Jake endured the mental assault through pure human stubbornness. He focused on thoughts of home, family, and the people counting on him. When the pain became unbearable, he found reserves of strength he never knew he possessed. He outlasted the test through sheer determination. The third combat was the most difficult. Jake faced a Veltar warrior in actual battle with real weapons. Death was a real possibility. The warrior was faster and stronger. With centuries of training and experience, Jake survived through adaptability and unpredictability. He used fighting techniques the Veltar had never seen. He improvised weapons and tactics that confused his opponent. Most importantly, he never stopped learning and adjusting his approach throughout the battle. When Jake finally defeated the third champion, the entire council sat in stunned silence. A human had accomplished what few Veltar warriors could achieve. Elder Corthani accused Jake of using trickery and deception, but the rules had been followed perfectly. The final trial was the choice of sacrifice. Jake was presented with an impossible moral dilemma designed to reveal his true character. He was told that he could save either Princess Zara or her 3 daughters from a terrible fate, but not both. Whatever choice he made would reveal whether he truly cared about the Veltar people or only wanted power and status. The scenario was fake, but Jake did not know this. He believed the lives of the people he had grown to care about hung in the balance. The test measured whether he would choose based on political advantage, personal gain, or genuine moral conviction. Jake's response shocked everyone present. He refused to accept the impossible choice. Instead, he demanded to know more about the threat and began developing plans to save everyone. He worked for hours trying to find a solution that would protect all the people he cared about. When the council revealed that the scenario was only a test, Jake was angry rather than relieved. He felt betrayed by the deception and spoke passionately about the value of every individual life. His emotional response revealed the depth of his moral conviction and his genuine care for others. Jake had passed all 3 trials, but more importantly, he had shown the Veltar nobles what humans were truly capable of. His success was not based on superior strength or intellect, but on uniquely human qualities like adaptability, determination, and moral courage. Elder Corthani and his supporters were forced to admit that Jake had met their challenge. They could no longer claim that humans were inferior or unworthy. The trials had proven that human thinking and values brought something valuable to Veltar civilization. Princess Zara watched Jake's triumph with pride and growing love. She had chosen him for his genetics, but the trials had revealed the true treasure of human nature. Jake represented the best of what humanity could offer to the galaxy. The council voted to approve Princess Zara's plan. Jake would be permitted to bond with the 3 daughters and father the next generation of the royal bloodline. But everyone now understood this union would bring more than just genetic diversity. It would introduce human ways of thinking that could transform Veltar society itself. Jake stood in the royal garden 3 days after his victory in the trials. The purple flowers seemed brighter now, as if responding to the hope that filled the air. Princess Zara approached him with her 3 daughters walking beside her. The time had come for Jake to make his final choice. Lyra, Nova, and Iris had all changed during the weeks since Jake's arrival. His human way of thinking about relationships and personal choice had affected them deeply. They no longer saw themselves as just royal daughters with predetermined roles. They had begun to think of themselves as individuals with their own dreams and desires. Jake looked at each daughter and saw the unique person she had become through their conversations. Lyra had started asking questions about what she wanted to study rather than just following traditional Veltar science. Nova had begun exploring interests beyond military service. Iris had created new art inspired by human concepts of emotional expression. Princess Zara spoke first, explaining the formal requirements of the bonding ceremony. According to Veltar tradition, Jake would need to choose 1 daughter as his primary partner. The others would serve as secondary partners for genetic purposes only. This arrangement had always been purely practical, designed to produce the strongest possible offspring. But Jake shook his head at the princess's explanation. He had spent weeks getting to know her daughters as individuals. He could not treat any of them as secondary or less important than the others. If he was going to bond with them, it would be as equal partners in a relationship, based on mutual respect and genuine care. Jake's response created another revolutionary moment in Veltar thinking. He insisted on approaching the bonding in the human way. He wanted to build deep emotional connections with each daughter before any physical relationship began. He wanted their consent and happiness to be more important than genetic considerations or royal duty. The 3 daughters were amazed by Jake's approach. No Veltar male had ever asked for their personal feelings about a marriage arrangement. They had always been told that duty to family and species was more important than individual desires. Jake was offering them something they had never experienced: the right to choose their own romantic destiny. Lyra was the first to respond to Jake's proposal. She had fallen in love with his curious mind and his gentle way of treating her as an intellectual equal. She wanted to explore the universe with someone who valued her thoughts and dreams as much as her. Genetic potential. Nova was initially more cautious. Her military training made her suspicious of change and new ideas. But Jake's courage during the trials had won her respect, and his kindness had touched her heart. She realized that she wanted a partner who could match her strength, while also showing her gentleness. Iris was the most excited by Jake's human approach to relationships. His stories about human art and creativity had inspired her to new heights of expression. She saw in Jake a kindred spirit who understood the importance of beauty and emotion in life. Princess Zara watched this exchange with growing wonder. She had brought Jake to their world to solve a genetic crisis, but he was solving something much deeper. He was showing her daughters that they could have both duty and happiness, both family loyalty and personal choice. The bonding ceremony took place 1 month later in the great Crystal Cathedral of Veltar Prime. Instead of the traditional formal ritual, Jake had worked with the daughters to create something new. The ceremony combined Veltar tradition with human concepts of love and partnership. Jake made personal vows to each daughter, promising to cherish her individual qualities and support her personal dreams. Lyra, Nova, and Iris each made their own vows, expressing their hopes for a future built on mutual respect and genuine affection. The ceremony was attended by nobles from across the Veltar Empire. Many came expecting to witness a desperate political arrangement, but they saw something that changed their understanding of what marriage could be. They saw four people choosing to share their lives based on love rather than just genetic compatibility. Elder Kurthani watched the ceremony with mixed feelings. He still believed in traditional ways, but he could see the happiness shining in the daughter's crystal eyes. Perhaps there was wisdom in this human approach to relationships that Veltar culture had missed. The months that followed brought changes throughout Veltar society. Jake established programs to bring more humans to their world for cultural and scientific exchange. Veltar citizens who met humans began questioning their own rigid social structures. Young Veltar couples started asking for the right to choose their own partners based on personal connection rather than family arrangement. Parents began listening to their children's dreams instead of just assigning them predetermined roles. Artists like Iris began creating works that expressed individual emotion rather than just traditional themes. Jake also worked with Veltar scientists to develop new technologies that combined human creativity with Veltar precision. Their joint projects produced innovations that neither species could have achieved alone. The collaboration proved that diversity of thinking was as valuable as diversity of genetics. The first children from Jake's bonding with the three daughters were born 18 months after the ceremony. The hybrid babies were healthy and strong, showing the best qualities of both species. They had the crystal beauty of their mothers, combined with the adaptability and curiosity of their human father. But the children represented more than just successful genetics. They were the first generation of Veltar raised with human concepts of individual choice and emotional expression. They grew up knowing that they could choose their own paths in life, while still honoring their family heritage. Princess Zara watched her grandchildren play in the royal gardens and marveled at how much had changed. The purple flowers were blooming brighter than they had in centuries, as if the land itself was responding to the new hope growing throughout their world. Jake stood beside her, now wearing the crystal ornaments that marked him as royal family. He had given up his human military rank to become prince consort of the Veltar Empire, but he had not given up his human nature or his connection to Earth. Messages flowed regularly between Veltar Prime and Earth as the two species continued to learn from each other. Human explorers came to study Veltar technology, while Veltar scientists visited Earth to understand human diversity and creativity. The exchange programs grew into permanent colonies. Humans settled on Veltar worlds, bringing their adaptability and innovative thinking. Veltar established research stations near Earth, sharing their advanced knowledge while learning human approaches to problem solving. Jake often thought about the moment when Princess Zara had first revealed her desperate plan. She had wanted to save her bloodline through human genetics, but the real salvation had come through human ways of thinking about relationships, individuality, and personal choice. The genetic crisis that had threatened the Veltar noble class was solved within a generation. But more importantly, Veltar society had evolved beyond its rigid traditions. Young people of both species now grew up with more freedom to choose their own destinies while still contributing to their communities. As Jake looked out at the stars from his crystal palace, he knew that humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not their genetics, but their spirit. Humans brought the willingness to question tradition, to value individual worth, and to build relationships based on genuine connection rather than just practical arrangements. The alliance between humans and Veltar became a model for other species in the galaxy. It showed that different civilizations could learn from each other without losing their unique identities. Diversity became recognized as a source of strength rather than a cause for conflict. Princess Zara had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. She had saved her family's bloodline and her people's future. But Jake had given her something even more valuable. He had shown her that love and duty could work together, that individual happiness and family loyalty were not opposites, but partners. In creating a better future, the story of the human prince and his 3 alien wives became legend throughout the galaxy. It was told as a tale of love conquering impossible odds, of courage facing overwhelming challenges, and of different peoples finding common ground through respect and understanding. Jake had come to Veltar Prime as a cultural ambassador. But he had become something much more important. He had become the bridge between 2 civilizations and the father of a new generation that would carry the best of both worlds into the future. His human legacy would live on in the stars for generations to come.